Disney released its film of Moana in 2016, many people who live within the South Pacific were hopeful of the fact that their culture and region of the world would get the exposure that it rightfully deserved, and the regions of Oceania will be treated respectfully when the film was first conceived and later developed and finally released internationally. Though the film was a success, there were plenty of inaccuracies and politically correct content within the film to remain vague on purpose as not to offend any Polynesian, but at the same time to not give credit where credit is fully due. A foreign and incorrect perception of Polynesia. Anyone of Polynesian descent or have spent any time at all in the South Pacific region will immediately notice that the film is inaccurate and actually reinforces certain aspects of racial profiling and stereotyping of the Polynesian people as a whole. Even before the film was officially released, when character sketches and designs were presented, there were initial claims of Maui, the demigod, and one of the main characters of the film appearing overweight. This is a classic stereotype of Polynesian men, though Disney explained that he was muscular and that his appearance looked like that because that was his own unique body shape. This explanation did not exactly silence critics who deemed the appearance to be insensitive. Added to that, of him being that of a buffoonish and clumsy nature in the film. This was something that people did not really think was right or befitting of Maui. Within Polynesian stories and legends, Maui is seen as someone who is very wise and quick-witted. Though in the film he is this, but for the plot of the film he is also one who is in denial of himself with his abilities and somewhat selfish towards Moana for a period of time throughout the film. Now, Moana herself is also of certain errors and accuracy, mostly with her name. In the film it's pronounced in a very Western or American pronunciation of Moana, which is the Hawaiian word for ocean, as Moana, when in fact, in some Polynesian languages or dialects, it's actually pronounced as Moana. Though Moana is used as well in terms of pronouncement, but if you were to choose which speech pronunciation sounds nicer or presentable for a Western audience, Moana does have a nice presentation and sound to it. The particular mashup and lumping together of the many ethnic groups of the region and cultures within the regions and languages of the people in Polynesia have also been called insensitive, and these simplistic views seen and heard throughout the film have never been fully addressed. Maui's tattoos. Maui has his tattoos, and through the film they're actually mentioned as magically enchanted and as visual proof of his heroic deeds. But upon further speculation from viewers and observation from people as well, the tattoos in question are actually from different regions of the South Pacific, not from a single tribe or place of origin as one might assume. Maui is most prevalent in Hawaiian mythology, with one of the Hawaiian islands named after him. In Maori mythology, he is also very prevalent with certain events in Maori mythology, as well as other heroic deeds. But the physical look of his tattoos give the impression of a Samoan origin. This in and of itself is a small problem. Though he's mentioned in Samoan mythology, he's more of Hawaiian or Maori origin. But to the untrained eye, Samoan tattoos look very appealing and beautiful, and to those who don't know the difference, can look very exotic of the South Pacific region as a whole. Moana's ethnicity. Disney princesses are often touted as being from a particular country or region in the world. Clearly, each princess has an origin that is absolute and clear for anyone to know. But Moana is particularly vague, once again due to the fact of ambiguity of the South Pacific region on purpose from Disney to avoid offending any particular region or country. The directors of the film, John Musker and Ron Clements, traveled around the South Pacific for a period of 3 months before getting inspiration for the film, which is perfectly fine, but at the same time there's no film assertion of Moana's heritage or where in the South Pacific everyone in her tribe is from exactly, which can be assumed is why she's from a fictional island in the film, rather than put her at a real location within the South Pacific. Most Americans would assume she's Hawaiian, while most other people in the world might assume her to be of Maori descent or even from Samoa. She technically has no ancestry from any real-life South Pacific nation, as mentioned in terms of relatability, rather just the region as a whole. Motunui's inspirations. Tetiaroa. This atoll is largely untouched and was used as a key reference point for the fictional island of Motunui in the film. Within the film, Moana and her people are from this fictional island of Motunui. Moana's father, Chief Tui, mentioned many times that their people don't go outside the reef because the island protects them. The enclosed lagoon was a key reference point for the film. Fiji. In terms of a setting, visually for Motunui, the creators and writers of the film had Fiji in mind when they were thinking of a setting for the fictional island of Motunui, and used various scenery from Fiji in inspiration for the actual island of Motunui that Moana and her people hail from in the film. Analysis of plot. The island of which Moana and her family as well as her people live upon is based upon a real-life island called Motunui, which is the Rapa Nui language term for large island. This said island is just south of Easter Island, which is actually called Rapa Nui by the indigenous people. Aspects of the story have been ignored by moviegoers or not fully understood, as it realistically goes like this. Hundreds of years ago, or by Maui's own account, at least 1,000 years prior, Moana's home island of Motunui was the home of navigating seafaring people who explored the vast oceans. Though the Pacific Ocean isn't actually called this during the film, it's natural for viewers to assume this. In a novel set alongside the film, there's a caption, quote, "They rode the waves, captured 4 winds, knew the stars by name, and read the clouds from one end of the sea to another," end quote. But Maui, a demigod of the wind and sea, stole the heart of the mother island, Te Fiti, and as a result of the imbalance, a darkness spread out across the waters, and through the centuries infested and actually destroyed countless islands and possibly people as well as villages in the South Pacific before eventually finding its way to Motunui. When trees and crops slowly start to wither and die from the darkness, and fish becoming less plentiful in the waterways around the island because they're naturally fleeing the darkness and leaving their natural spawning grounds around the island. This is naturally causing panic and stress among the people. If we combine the old stories from Maui and legends mentioned by Moana's father Tui and grandmother Tala, Maui, whom later mentioned that he did it with the best of intentions, but this act is slowly causing the death of all of Polynesia. The only way to reverse the eventual death of all life is to return the heart. But the ocean did know what to do, and eventually decided that Moana is the chosen one to save all of existence. Meanwhile, Moana's people on Motunui have not experienced or even known of perils outside the reef because of the chief's ancestors who isolated the tribe and kept them on the island. The stone sitting atop the island's highest cliff is a record of all prior chiefs. With the stones, it roughly goes back to the era when Maui stole the heart. The information isn't lost. It's technically secret knowledge, due to the fact that Moana learns the truth and only learns the truth from her grandmother, and that this is actually knowledge known only to the royal family. Chief Tui is firmly against Moana leaving the reef, but curiosity of the outside world as well as the situation with the chief himself and the fact that the darkness is finally encroaching upon Motunui, he has no choice but to let her go. If the darkness were not a threat to the home island and its people, he would have naturally been more assertive about her remaining. Moana finally ventures forth, and through her travels stumbles upon Maui on a deserted island. He mentions that he's been there for 1,000 years, and this coincides with the story I mentioned with Moana's grandmother Tala. Apparently, it can be deduced that the gods punished Maui by imprisoning him on that island for stealing the heart. During the escape with Te Fiti's heart, Te Kā battled Maui and soundly defeated him, which resulted in his fishhook weapon being separated from him, which always had an undertone of Maui being afraid of Te Kā. With Maui not at full strength, without his weapon, and imprisoned by the gods on that deserted island, they deemed that to be enough of shame for him until Moana was born, at which the ocean and fate decided to bring Moana to Maui for him to redeem himself by helping her to return the heart. What's interesting is that throughout the film there's a theme that the gods have meddled in mortal affairs, and as a result they're the ones to basically blame for the situation the islands are facing. This can be viewed as not accurate in terms of the South Pacific. Polynesian peoples colonized and developed the South Pacific before European powers reached the region. While in some examples there were peaceful development and sustainability, such as in Hawaii and New Zealand, oftentimes there were violent cultural conflicts between various islands, such as Samoa and Tahiti, between various groups for various reasons, as mentioned. Also, in certain situations, tribes colonized islands and population amounts exceeded sustainability on the said island, and this caused the civilization-wide collapse, as which occurred on Rapa Nui. With the entire history of the Polynesian region, it's far too much for even Disney to fully explain or portray in a film, which explains why aspects of Polynesia were mashed together, stitched and sewn together to form the movie that it was. A nice and beautiful film, but to those people it attempts to represent, it's a Hawaiian woman wearing Samoan clothing, traveling with a Maori demigod adorned with Samoan tattoos, trying to save her anonymous homeland aboard a Fijian boat. The Fijian government actually made a formal complaint against Disney for using the traditional boat designs in the film without permission. It's unclear if Disney acknowledged the royalties issue dispute during the film's initial release. The heart itself has also been connected to Maori origins of Ponamu greenstone of the native Maori kuru swill design. Apparently, the heart is of such great power, it's known all over the oceans and its islands as something extraordinary. This is confirmed during the confrontation with Tamatoa, another godlike being that they encounter, which is also the subject of some disdain from viewers. In some cultures of the South Pacific, Tamatoa is the name of a hero and being of respect. Some did not like the fact that the character was portrayed like a snail. Once Maui bests Tamatoa with Moana's help, he gets his fishhook weapon back and reveals the truth to Moana that he was abandoned by his parents and the gods took pity on him. This is more similar to the actual Maori and Hawaiian legends of the character. In the end, Moana and Maui travel to the origin of the darkness to reverse the effect and to fight Te Kā, which also can be hinted of the fact that they travel back to the exact center of Polynesia, to where the darkness originated from. Not until the absolute very end of the film does Moana realize that Te Kā and Te Fiti are the same being. It's also something that Maui did not tell Moana, and in terms of a plot twist, this might be the only real example Disney has ever done. Knowing that Maui would never make amends with Te Fiti, he actually performs a haka. It's notable because it's essentially the only time in the film that Maui does the tribal war dance. It can be theorized that the reason why he did that is because in certain Maori or Hawaiian situations, a war dance is performed when you know that you're about to die in battle. So it can be viewed as Maui potentially sacrificing himself to help Moana and make amends for what he did. However, Moana discovers the connection between Te Kā and Te Fiti and decides to do it on her own and gives her the heart, and Te Kā notices this. With the heart back within her, Te Fiti returns to her normal balance and reverses all of what Maui did. Te Fiti herself or the concept of it is based yes and no in part with legends. A good example of Te Fiti is the Hawaiian volcanic goddess of Pele. In Hawaiian custom, Pele was often prayed to and the goddess was highly respected, much like how Moana and Maui show deep respect in Te Fiti's presence. The film ends with Moana leading the renewed interest in settling the islands of the ocean, with some remaining on Motunui, while others leave for the great beyond. Controversy after release. There has been quite a bit of controversy regarding the film, as many in the small region of the South Pacific were worried that the film would bring an increased amount of tourists into the region. News sources complained that Auuli Cravalho, the actress whose voice is Moana in the film, gave suggestions to people when asked, when is it a good time to visit the Hawaiian Islands? Hawaii is a small place, and tourism is not always welcome there. A statewide backlash against tourists was slowly building for a period of time before the film's release. In April of 2016, months before the film's scheduled release, well-known Hawaiians gave a special commercial reminding locals that tourism is absolutely crucial for the local economy. As Fox mentioned that anywhere from 60 to 80% of the Hawaiian state income is from all aspects related to tourism. It also perpetuates the greater Polynesian region as an exotic holiday destination for better or for worse. And by extension, New Zealand, Samoa, Fiji, Tahiti are also affected by this. Advocates of the South Pacific argue that the film can perpetuate cultural appropriation and glorifies American colonialism or Western occupation of the region. In Hawaii, many natives were against the American annexation in 1898 and still fight for complete independence from American governance. One of the early scenes in the film, when Moana was teaching children how to dance, there was a boy flirting with her. This is actually a tongue-in-cheek reference to how sexuality was once viewed in the greater South Pacific region, and is still viewed in certain regions of the South Pacific today. That, from an early age, it's perfectly normal to experience and encourage sexuality. Critics have published articles about concerns and reception to the film following a fully published academic letter from scholars in the South Pacific to Disney. They all argue that if Disney were to make money off the South Pacific region, which it did, that it should give back to Polynesia financially. Only after the political and social backlash did Disney announce a new scholarship program with the Asian and Pacific Islander American Scholarship Fund. Disney gave out $500,000 in funds to young people of Asian or Polynesian ethnicity, which provided 150 scholarships over the next 3 years, during and after the film's release. The film made $643 million during its run in international theaters. Only a small handful of students will earn something back from what Disney took. Many native South Pacific Islanders do hope that the film will bring more attention to the circumstances that they face back home with lack of development, isolation, and care for its people. Reception was also viewed as a propagation or further theft of another culture by a mainly white audience. One infamous example was Disney taking advantage of children who were briefly interested in Polynesian culture and decided to cash in on all of this, as there was a costume of Maui that children could wear. Critics viewed this costume as a form of blackface where white youths could wear this and change their identity to experience what it's like to be a person of color. Disney later stopped selling the costume after the backlash. Another example is the small spike in accounts of girls being named Moana after the film's release. Polynesians say that, as mentioned, it's not the correct way to say the word. Moana, not Moana for the word ocean. One well-explained example states the reason why Maui was portrayed as he was is mostly due to an American stereotype of the South Pacific region in general. An analyst from New Zealand mentioned that in America, the stereotype of Polynesians having huge, curly, wild black hair, and Bilke, from their version of American football and sport exposure, has it unfairly represented of him as mostly a buffoon-like hero. This analyst explained that was the reason Maui looked the way he did. This American view of the South Pacific and even the American view of Hawaii can distort the real view of the South Pacific. The analyst also mentioned the Maui costume because some colonial ethnologists from the 1800s preserved human remains of the Maori during the British settlement of New Zealand, and that this was very personal with many in New Zealand when they heard of the facts and information about the Maui costume. Other New Zealand civil rights groups mentioned that most prior Disney heroes tended to look far more muscular than Maui, mentioning that it's not an accurate portrayal of Maui as mentioned before, but they were going to support the film because they had little else in terms of exposure or representation for their region of the world. The constant mishmash of songs and music throughout the film were also noticed, as the non-English lyrics were from Hawaiian, Tokelauan, Maori, and Samoan origin. Music and instruments were also of Samoan, Tahitian, and Hawaiian origin. It was again noticed and expected that a majority of the non-Polynesians won't be able to tell the difference, and naturally few did. Only those who were of South Pacific descent or have knowledge of the region were able to notice these facts. One final aspect of discussion is the fact that though Disney styled Moana as a Polynesian film, and the fact that it can be viewed as a hidden fusion attempt to gloss over the South Pacific region, people connected with the film were not fully Polynesian but of mixed Polynesian descent. Dwayne Johnson is of African descent from his father while his mother is Samoan. Auli Cravalho is mostly Puerto Rican Spaniard with distant Hawaiian ancestry. Online commentary says it's nice to have Polynesia represented, but many wanted a full representation, not someone who's distantly related and might not fully able to understand the culture because of multiple ethnic origins within them. The film itself was that. A great film. If people were not to look at the truth which could be hidden in plain sight to anyone who were not to notice or indeed see the fine details.